Hi, this is Jack Hinshelwood, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jam Along, the podcast for anyone and everyone who plays bluegrass.
My guest on Bluegrass Jam Along this week is Jack Hinshelwood. Jack is a guitarist. He's the winner of the Wayne Henderson Guitar Championship, Knoxville World's Fair Guitar Championship, and a two-time winner at Galax as well. And he's also the former director of the Crooked Road, Virginia's Heritage Music Trail. Jack, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. What a pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you here, and particularly exciting in the year we're in, because there's a project you're co-producing to celebrate what would have been Doc Watson's 100th birthday. And I'm really excited to talk about that, and also to talk about a record of yours that we'll come on to a bit later. But yeah, Doc Watson would have been 100 in March, and you've teamed up with co-producer Ted Olson to put a show together to sort of take around and celebrate Doc's music, not just through music, but also through sharing stories and memories of Doc. And I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, this kind of came about because Ted, who's done extensive writing and research, he's just a great Appalachian music historian. He's a professor of Appalachian Studies at East Tennessee State University, and he's written about the famous Bristol sessions and other sessions that took place in the early or late 1920s, early 1930s. And he worked recently with the Kraft Recording Group on a compilation. It's a 4-CD book box set called Doc Watson, Life's Work, a Retrospective. And Ted did the research and the album notes for that. And he is right at the moment, he's nominated for a Grammy for Best Album Notes. And we got our fingers crossed that come February 5th, he'll win a Grammy for that. And so he worked on that recording, which came out November 2021. And we had a sort of a mini release concert with music, and Ted spoke about Doc's legacy back in November of 2021 when that came out. And he invited myself and Wayne Henderson and Jack Lawrence, who played with Doc many years, to come be a part of that, which we did. And the release of that recording, coupled with the fact that 2023 was going to be the year of Doc's 100th birthday, we just thought, what a great reason to celebrate Doc's music. And so we decided we would put a concert program together, Ted and Wayne and Jack and myself. And we wanted to also have T. Michael Coleman, who, along with Jack Lawrence, T. Michael, the two of them played with Doc, I believe, longer than any other artist that Doc ever worked with. And so they've got a wealth of great stories. And our concert program, we do the music, of course, but it's also interspersed with great stories about Doc and things that hopefully people that love his music will also find equally interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool evening. It's it sounds like not only, are you sharing memories and music, but also encouraging people who come along to the shows to share any memories as well. Just sounds like a lovely collaborative event.
Yeah, we really have tried to encourage that, and we've had some great feedback from people with clearly just memories of Doc touching them, their lives in a big way, and getting to hear him at a jam session till 5 a.m. before he left to go catch a plane to another job. I recall was a memory of someone So yeah, those are great, and we do solicit those from audiences and share them. Ted typically would share those on stage.
That's really cool. And presumably, both with Jack and with T. Michael, spending time touring with a musician like Doc is one thing, but touring with Doc, I presume, involved spending a lot of time with him, because he's, somebody who's blind requires a bit more assistance on the road than the average musician. And so they must have not just memories of sharing a stage, but just memories of being sort of close to him for a long time.
Right. They both definitely do. And I'm so thoroughly enjoying myself getting to hear stories about Doc that I've never heard. And even small things like we played a show, did this concert in Roanoke, Virginia for the Friends of the Blue Ridge. And they had a pre-concert reception they were having food for, and they wanted to know what were Doc's favorite foods. And I now know that you couldn't go wrong if you served him up a plate of sea bass or lasagna or country steak with mushroom gravy, and topped off with a big slice of key lime pie. That was good eating as far as Doc was concerned. And, that's the kind of thing that T. Michael and Jack knew and observed from traveling, and of course going out to get dinner and eat while on the road.
And how do you sort of choose which music to put in the shows? Does it change? Does it like to change each time, or have you got a sort of set list of favorites that you put together?
There are Doc's repertoire. It was so extensive. That's a real plus for doing multiple concerts. We'll probably never do more than scratch the surface of all the music that he knew. And so, yes, it helps keep us interested and keep the shows fresh and so forth. And so we structure the shows to where all of us have an opportunity to play our favorite pieces of Doc, and those tend to change from show to show. And then we also do songs as a group. And we surely make an effort to so that folks will go home hearing those really essential Doc Watson songs, Deep River Blues and Tennessee Stud and Black Mountain Rag and those kinds of things. I know if I went to a show to hear Doc music and didn't hear songs like that, I'd be wondering why they left that out. So we try to include those and try to delve into all those different genres that Doc was so well versed in, from blues and gospel and show tunes and fiddle tunes and rockabilly. Just his repertoire was so extensive. I find that to be one of the most remarkable things about him. So we try to make the shows reflect that as well.
I think that's one of the really cool things, because people think of Doc and talk about Doc as being sort of an incredibly authentic musician and incredibly sort of just like a very honest delivery of everything that he did. But the range of things that he did was huge. And to sort of bring that same level of just directness to everything that's proper musical character, isn't it?
I think so. I think this is why he was such a beloved artist. One of the reasons is that authenticity. People connect to that and feel that and respond to that. And I think certainly for me, that's one of the things about him that's so appealing.
And there's a definite sense even though Doc sang whatever he wanted to sing, wherever it was from, there's also a very strong sense that Doc has a very geographic connection to a specific bit of the world as well, and very deep roots within the music of a certain area. And I know sort of you grew up not too far from that part of the world, and it comes through in the music. It feels very, very centered in place as well.
It certainly does. He's a great example of the artist that achieved a level of success that could have taken him almost anywhere, and yet he knew where home was, deep in the Blue Ridge in North Carolina in the mountains. And so that's where he lived his entire life. Makes me think of Ralph Stanley as another great example of that. Ralph lived in his entire life not far from where he and Carter rambled around over in Dickinson County here in Southwest Virginia, where I live. So, yeah, he's very identified with that. I think that might have contributed to folks that knew of him from the folk revival as this incredible mountain musician with that mountain music repertoire. That's what then surprised them so much when he would whip out a pop standard or a rockabilly song. They had to get educated quick as to, just to keep up with the songs and things that he could present on stage.
It's really interesting. I find it personally very interesting just because, I grew up in the UK. I've always lived in the UK, but I've listened to this music for, a number of years, and the idea of it coming from a specific place, it's easy to be romanticized from my point of view and to be a sort of slightly unreal place that exists in these songs, but just the connection of Doc's music to where Doc lived, and even further back than that, just sort of reading and discovering that his grandmother knew people in songs like Tom Dooley. They're real people, real events that actually happened in a specific location. They're not just out of a storybook kind of thing. I think there's something remarkable about that.
Yes, that's part and parcel with authenticity. I think. He was a tremendous student of all music, but he was a great student of the music of his family, his community, and that area that he came from. And we know he early on as a child got to hear phonograph records of early country music, and then when radio came along, devoted listener to that. And so he was pretty much a sponge, I think, soaking up everything he heard. And Lord knows his sense of hearing was quite advanced, in part to being a blind person. And he was something, the way he absorbed music and built that incredible repertoire.
We'll be right back with you just after this. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins. If you're attending the NAMM show in January, stop by the Collings booth to say hello to the team, get hands-on with their selection of customised acoustics and electrics, and check out some exciting new prototypes they're working on for 2024. They'll also have a few of their world-class artists on hand demoing various instruments. And if you can't attend, don't forget to follow their Instagram and Facebook accounts throughout the show for photos, videos, and the latest news. Collings Guitars are hand-built from the Sound Up in Austin, Texas. This episode is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, the home of roots music instruction. If one of your 2024 resolutions is to improve as a musician, Peghead Nation is the place to go. They have 65 streaming video courses for guitar, mandolin, banjo, fiddle, dobro, bass and ukulele from some of the leading names in acoustic music. Courses cover bluegrass, old-time, Irish music and swing, plus lessons dedicated to improvisation, theory and ear training. Your first course is just $20 a month, and you can add more for $10. Try any course free for a month with the promo code JAMALONG. Make 2024 a year of more music at pegheadnation.com. Yeah, and it's such a sort of body of work and such a deep well of stuff. It's something you can just go back to again and again. It's not something you can ever tire of, really.
I'm certain I've never tired of it. Don't expect I ever will. And in this process, I've dug deeper into Doc's music than I ever did previously. And what a joy that has been. Not only revisiting songs I had heard and maybe knew and played for years, but quite a bit of material. And this is probably thanks to YouTube and all the access we have these days to great historic recordings and so forth. And it's done nothing but just expand my appreciation for Doc as a musician and as a person. I've listened to far more interviews of Doc than I had listened to in the past, and gotten such a better sense of him as a person. Plus, talking with Jack and Wayne and T. Michael and Ted's work and so forth. It's just a fascinating person. Not just his music, his outlook on what was important to him, which seemed first and foremost to be he wanted to be able to make a decent living, provide a good life for his family. That seems to have always been uppermost in his mind. And everything from having a conversation with Merle when Merle asked him if he ever thought about going commercial, I think in the sense of, being dictated to about what music to play and how often to play and how much time to spend on the road and where to go play and all of that comes with a real commercial effort to make it big, so to speak, in the music business. And he told Merle that was not for him, that he wanted, again, to make a good living for his family. And he had no interest in that rat race, as he called it. And I think Merle agreed. I think Merle probably said, "Good. I'm glad to hear you say that." That seems to be Merle's temperament pretty much as well.
And it's a tricky balance if your musical career is sort of providing for your family, but is also the thing that takes you away from your family, particularly if you spend your whole life in one place, surrounded by your family and by the area that every show is something that takes you away from that.
Yep.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about diving more into Doc's music. I'm sure you know more about Doc and Doc's music than I ever will, and the idea that you're still finding new things in there and enjoying that. And there's a real it'd be really nice to think that this 100th birthday brings more people to Doc's music and introduces him to a new audience and a sort of deeper understanding from the people who love his music already.
That's definitely one of the goals, is to get some more people to understand, appreciate, and love Doc's music. We've talked about that frequently. I think it's probably inevitable.
And one of the people who's sort of definitely helping with that at the moment is Billy Strings. And I know you've been invited to take the Doc at 100 show along to a special gig of Billy's as part of the tour.
Right. Doc's actual birthday is March 3rd, and it's a day on which I plan to eat a big slice of key lime pie. And Billy is going to be doing a concert at the it's the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Winston-Salem on Doc's birthday, March 3rd. So that concert, he wanted to pay tribute to Doc, and so he invited our group, the Doc at 100, Ted, myself, and Wayne, Jack, and T. Michael. He's also invited Molly Tuttle and Bryan Sutton, and we're just going to go Doc all night long. And so I think that will, he's such a phenomenal artist and has got so many people excited about roots music in general and bluegrass. And now here's this tribute to Doc. I can't help but think in a big way, there's going to be a lot of people who may not have been aware of Doc before that will be aware of Doc afterward. And Billy's been promoting Doc for a long time. So he definitely cut his teeth on Doc's music, as like the rest of us.
And you sort of know, like, for all the places Billy's taken his own music and all the sort of experimentation that's in there too, when he sings those songs, you know he means them. Like, there's just as much directness and honesty when Billy sings that material as when anybody does.
Yeah, I was just listening to Billy's version of Little Sadie and thinking what a fantastic job he did or does on that particular song, and of course many others. But he's definitely hitting on all cylinders, and you can tell Doc's. I mean, you can hear Doc's influence, of course, in there. But of course, he adds his own touches throughout whatever it is he's doing.
Yeah. So where will people be able to see these shows? I know you're probably still putting together the list for the rest of the year, but what have you got coming up?
We've kind of got a string. The next show is at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia. That's February 26th, and then March 2nd will be at the Ramcat, which is a wonderful music venue in Winston-Salem. And then the next night we'll be staying there in Winston-Salem and joining Billy on his Doc tribute show, March the 3rd at the Coliseum. March 11, it's going to be in Bassett, Virginia, for a program called Rives on the Road. Rives is the theater there in Martinsville that takes shows out throughout the community there. And March 25 at the Wortham Center for the Performing Arts in Asheville, North Carolina. May the 8th at the McLaughlin Center for the Arts at Emory Henry College in Virginia. And we've got a few other, let's see, I know September 9th is at the Paramount Theater in Burlington, North Carolina. So pretty much be out there all through 2023 at least, and working on trying to get out in the Northeast, up in the Boston and New York area, and possibly out in the Pacific, out in the California area. Try to swing out there if we can as well.
It'd be great. It'd be really exciting to see those sort of. There's something lovely about it, not just being a one-off thing, but something that continues through the year. That it's not just Doc's birthday we're celebrating; it's sort of a year of celebrating Doc.
Yeah, for sure. That's just been incredibly fun for all of us. So I'd like to keep doing it. And if anybody wants to find those list of shows, it's on our website. That's just doc@100.com. That's just doc AT and the number 100.com. And all the shows, of course, are listed there that are booked already, and new ones will be included there.
Cool. I'll make sure I include a link to that in the show notes as well, so people can click through and go and find that then. That'd be great. And sort of also a bit of an overlap with all of this, I'd like to talk to you about a record that you've made, which, a lot of the music there's a lot of overlap there. It's called 50 Years in the Making, and it's described as an anthology of old-time bluegrass and blues. And it's such a great collection of songs, and such a, there's so many things in there that Doc would have played. There's even, Blackberry Rags in there, which Doc composed himself. I'd love to chat a little bit about that project, 'cause it sounds like it took you, a couple of years to put together, and it's got a really interesting mix of material and people on there.
Right. This was my pandemic project. When we couldn't get together and we couldn't see our friends, I decided to put together this recording project. It's called 50 Years in the Making, because that's how long those songs and tunes have been gathering in my repertoire. And so I started working on it either January or February of 2020, when COVID hit just a few weeks later. And so worked on it again for a couple of years, and had such wonderful support from artists that I've loved their music. There's 24 different artists that helped record the music. Folks that'll be familiar to your listeners, like Doyle Lawson, maybe Phil Wiggins, incredible blues harmonica player, Rob Ikes, Jimmy Van Cleve, wonderful fiddler. Anyway, 24 in all. I left out a bunch of wonderful artists, and just had such an incredible time playing this music that I've loved for all these years, and never had a chance to record, and finally did with some of the folks whose music I admire the most. And so it was an incredibly gratifying, satisfying recording project to put together. And that came out in April of 2022, when we were able to start getting back together, and we put on a couple of concerts. Had Butch Robbins and Trey Hensley helped. About 10 of the artists played in the actual concerts that we did 2 nights. And I'd also note that one of your fellow UKers played with me on one of Doc's, one of the songs from Doc's repertoire. That's one of these ancient ballads that Francis Child compiled in his books, called Geordie, or Georgie, as Doc used to call it. And I always loved that tune and song, and wanted to have horns on it. It deals with ancient times, with kings and kingly courts and that sort of thing. And to me, a horn instrument is the perfect sort of mood setter for anything to do courts and royalty and all of that. And so I ended up working with Stephen Meade, who's a remarkable brass player, particularly the euphonium, which is very similar to a baritone horn that more people might be familiar with. And it, I thought, just set that song off wonderfully. It's a dark, kind of a rich tone horn, and it fits, I thought, very well with that particular song. Yeah. And so, you know, when it was hard to get together with friends during the pandemic, this recording allowed me to make new friends, like Stephen Meade. And
it's really cool. I mean, I grew up in the UK, and I spent some of my youth playing in brass bands. So I love that kind of sound. Those sort of darker sort of brass sounds. Is something just haunting about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He lives up in Manchester, I believe.
It's and it's a really interesting collection of people you've got on there as well. And like you say, maybe it's slightly easier to do some of that when you don't have to physically be in a room with people, because there's names, like you said, there's names on there that people will know, like Doyle Lawson, Michael Cleveland, and some great younger people. Dory Freeman's on there, like Trey Hensley. You know, it's a lovely mix of people. And if you don't have to be able to get them all physically together, it allows you just to pick and choose sort of track by track a little bit, doesn't it?
That's our modern day technology that allows us to be able to do something like that. I had a few folks that came here to record. Other folks that were in other places either recorded at home if they had that capability, or I would make arrangements for them to visit a studio. Great uilleann piper by the name of Ronan Brown did his recording for me at home on another child ballad, the one that Dory Freeman joined on, and he did such a lovely job. And I kept being surprised because not surprised so much, but delighted at the creativity and thoughtfulness of the artists that helped. I would have suggestions on what I was looking for them to do, and then they would add something, a twist that, you know, was so creative and just made it. And one example that I think about all the time in that regard is I had asked Michael Cleveland if he would we recorded a Bill Monroe instrumental called Southern Flavor, and I asked Michael if he would put twin fiddles on tracks on it. And lo and behold, it came back, and he had overdubbed a third fiddle. Somehow he just knew that what would really make that tune soar would be all three parts. And so that's what he did, and I'm very grateful for that.
And it's really interesting hearing some of those sounds like the euphonium or the uilleann pipes on these songs, because, like, as a Brit, I'm fascinated by the journey some of these songs have made over from my side of the Atlantic to your side. And, you know, there's many of the ballads that were originally British songs that made it over there and then were sort of collected in Appalachia and brought back over to, and I'm listening to music now that's funneled back through Doc Watson, funneled back through all sorts of people. And that constant refreshing of the music and the journey it makes from one side of the Atlantic to the other, I find that endlessly fascinating.
I do as well. This is a wonderful subject that Ted Olson, of course, is very knowledgeable about, the transfer of that music, and it's gone both ways. I remember hearing Mick Maloney talk about how U.S. minstrel shows ended up creating, banjo craze in Ireland, and for which I'm not sure Mick ever forgave us. But anyway, it's this is what music is. It's a shared experience, and it travels fast, seems like.
Yeah, and I'm going to play one of the tracks from the record at the end of this podcast so people can have a listen, and obviously link to the record so people can go and hear it as well. But I think that really does sort of overlap with where we started talking about Doc and about music being a conversation and a journey and a, just songs travel and then songs settle down for a while and change and then travel again. And I think a lot of these songs that people will hear when they dig into Doc's music as all this stuff surfaces around his birthday, it'll hopefully give a new life to a lot of this stuff. And that'll be the start of some journeys. People will pick them up and take them and do what they do with them, and they'll find themselves in other bits of the world, hopefully, and it all sort of starts again.
It just occurred to me from what you said that what an interesting project it would be to trace a song, take a song from someone like myself, and find out where I learned that, go connect with that other person, find out where they learned it. And I'm sure some of these songs have made interesting journeys from person to person to person. That would be a fascinating little study.
And much like objects, people repurpose things and people use the bits they need. And, one of the records that I love is Fairport Convention's Legion Leaf, which has a track on it called Matty Groves, which has the same tune as Shady Grove. And I always sort of thought they must be the same song with different lyrics. And then I read an interview with Richard Thompson where he said, no, they just nicked the tune from Shady Grove because it fit, these tunes do the rounds and keep coming back.
And of course, Matty Groves is one of Doc's songs that's, I've never played that one. I think it's quite challenging. If I recall, he does some very quick, finger picking, a role that was all his own. Being a person who finger picked with just a thumb pick and just his first finger, he did some remarkable things that I play with two fingers and a thumb pick, and I stand amazed at when you listen to things like Doc's guitar and realize, my gosh, he's doing all of that with just one finger, is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, and just that synthesis of him hearing, Maybelle Carter, and hearing Jimmy Rogers and hearing Merle Travis and putting it all together into a thing that became Doc Watson. It's it's another one of those. It's another part of that musical journey. You take what you find and you make it your own.
That's it. He was a genius.
Well, let's really hope that the next few months lead a lot more people to Doc's music and make it their own and take it on the next bit of its journey. And who knows where it'll be in 100 years' time. Yeah,
that's for sure.
Thanks so much for coming on to talk about this. It's going to be a really exciting year, and people are in for a treat when they come to see these shows.
Matt, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for putting this together, and keep picking.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bluegrass Jam Along is proud to be sponsored by Collings Guitars and Mandolins, making some of the finest guitars and mandolins in the world since the 1970s. Visit collingsguitars.com and find out why.